The shit is wicked on these mean streets, mean streets.
Dear God, I wonder can you save me?
In the streets and the game, some names hit different. We talking gun toters, drug kings, and crime bosses who left their mark standing tall in gangster lore and hip-hop history. Over here at Evil Streets TV, we've covered a lot of these street legends, showing love for the roles they played in the hood and behind bars. They got the same kind of aura as Robin Hood, Billy the Kid, Jesse James, Bonnie and Clyde, Lucky Luciano, John Gotti, and Pablo Escobar. These ain't just criminals. They icons with the receipts to prove it. Their names have been shouted out and their stories retold in countless rap lyrics over the years. So come ride shotgun with us and see why their name rings bells. Peter Pistol Pete Rollack. Peter Pistol Pete Rollack, straight out the boogie down Bronx, was the OG behind Sex Money Murder. Pistol Pete had the streets shook. He was a straight savage, stacking millions off that drug game in the late 80s and early 90s. Son had no chill when it came to busting his hammer, a real-life Billy the Kid. Pete wasn't hesitating. Quick to pull, quicker to let that thing sing. His name was heavy in the streets, featured in Don Diva as his mags all over the street DVDs, and he even got his shine in Street Legends Volume 1, Death Before Dishonor. Homie was certified. Pistol Pete and his Bloods, the Sex Money Murder Gang, had Soundview in a chokehold back in the day. Son was a whole menace out there. One of the most feared cats in all of New York during the crack era. All Pete had to do was give the word, and bodies would drop. Simple as that. He had the whole hood painted red, both with that flag and the drama he brought. Even when he got locked up, his name still rang bells, and his influence stayed strong from behind them walls. Real Bronx legend. While Pete was locked up on Rikers back in '96, he linked up with the Bloods and brought Sex Money Murder into the fam. OG Mac and Deadeye McKenzie put him on, and Pete made sure his whole hood was on that red wave. Even behind bars, dude was still running his empire. Letters, phone calls, whatever it took. But you know how it goes. Snitches couldn't keep their mouths shut. Cats put his name in the mix, and next thing you know, Pete got hit with indictments. First down in North Carolina, and then right back in NYC, tied to multiple bodies. Pete was just 20 when the system snatched him up, and the charges kept stacking like bricks. A lot of his homies flipped on him, and now he's sitting in ADX Florence, that supermax where communication's mad limited. Word was he might have touched road soon, but the feds switched up quick when America's Most Evil Gangsters did a whole segment on him. They peeped the reach he still got out here, even from a cage. To this day, Pistol Pete still got love in NY and from blood sets all over the East Coast. Dude's a legend. His name even getting love in Nas bars. Icon status locked in. E-Moneybags, Eric Smith, aka E-Moneybags, born November 19th, 1969, was reppin' BK but raised out in Queens. Homie was a real one in the game, dropped one official album, but his name rang bells way beyond that. After he got hit in 2001, DJ K Slay came through with a tribute mixtape holding it down for Bags. That tape had unreleased heat and freestyles from the man himself, keeping his legacy alive in the streets. E-Moneybags ain't just a rapper. He's a part of that real Queens history. During his run, E-Moneybags was out here collabing with some heavy hitters in the game. I'm talking Pac, Live Squad, Prodigy, Norega, Bravehearts, and Nas. He dropped his only album back in '99, in E-Moneybags We Trust, and that joint solidified his place in the streets. Now things got heated when he found himself beefing with Jay-Z. Word is Bags wasn't feeling Jay having an artist named H Moneybags on Rockefeller's roster. That disrespect didn't sit right. Things popped off live on Hot 97. Hova was on air. And Prodigy, who rode with Bags, called in, passed the phone to Bags, and it was on. The two started going at it live on the station, letting the city hear the tension. So after that whole situation on Hot 97, E-Moneybags ain't let it slide. He clapped back with a few diss tracks aimed straight at Hova, but Jay never fired back. The most known joint from that was The Gospel. And what's wild is that it ended up being the last track he ever recorded. Fast forward to July 16th, 2001, 9:45 p.m. in Queens Village, and E-Moneybags got taken out. A lot of folks think the hit came from the Supreme Team, the notorious Queens drug crew. Word on the streets is, it was payback for Bags murking Colbert Johnson, who was tight with Supreme McGriff, back in December '99. That move made him a target, and the streets caught up with him. Back in February '07, the streets caught up with Supreme Team's boss, Kenneth Supreme McGriff. The feds locked him up for life after he got found guilty of calling the shots on E-Moneybags and Troy Singleton's murders back in 2001. Supreme ain't just getting life for the bodies, though. It was wrapped up with all the drug charges that came with running his empire. When E-Moneybags got clipped in Queens in July '01, he was chilling with Big Noid and Cormega, sitting in his Lincoln Navigator. Dude got hit with 10 shots. Then in late August, cops found a tape. Crazy, right? The video had been filmed from July 13th to July 16th and showed Bags driving and parking his ride on the very same block where he got gunned down at 9:45 p.m. That footage, shot by a McGriff associate, Dennis Crosby, and his girl, Nicole Brown. E-Moneybags left behind his son, Eric Smith Jr., who got to carry that legacy. Howard Pappy Mason, straight out of Queens, New York. This dude was a straight-up enforcer, the top dog in his crew, the Bebos, rolling with Fat Cat Nichols, the kingpin of the crack era. Pappy was the kind of cat that even other crazy cats feared. You know, he was all over Feds magazine and had his story laid out in Queens Reigns Supreme and The Dope Game, Misadventures of Fat Cat and Pappy Mason. Pappy repped the Jamaican Crown Heights hood in Brooklyn, but made his real noise in Queens during the South Jamaica crack wars. He had the block locked down for Fat Cat's empire and ran his own turf in 40 projects with the Bebos. When Pappy was in the mix, you had dudes shaking in their boots, straight up terrified to cross him. But yo, things took a dark turn when Fat Cat got pinched on a parole violation. Pappy wasn't playing. He took out the PO that busted Fat Cat, and it didn't stop there. When Pappy caught a bid himself, he sent a clear message from behind bars. We lose one, they lose one, and had an NYC cop knocked off too. He was tried, convicted, and locked up for life. Pappy was the real deal, a beast in the drug game during the crack epidemic. His rep's so solid, even Jay-Z, Nas, and 50 Cent have dropped bars about him. His saga's been immortalized in DVDs and books like Cop Shot. Now he's sitting in ADX Florence doing life, a legend of the streets. Next up is Clarence Preacher Heatley, the real street beast from the Bronx and Harlem. This dude and his crew, the Preacher crew, weren't playing. They were running the game with extortion, kidnaps, and bodies stacked up like it was nothing. Heatley's right-hand man was John Cuff, a former housing cop who switched sides. By the early 90s, the NYPD and the FBI had to team up to take down these wildcats. Both Heatley and Cuff cut deals to dodge the death penalty, spilling their guts to save their skins. Now Heatley's chilling at Florida's Federal Correctional Institution, Talladega. Ain't much known about Heatley's early days. Born in the early 50s, raised in Harlem, dude dropped out by 4th grade. He learned how to hustle and muscle his way through the rough streets, racking up a record for gun possession and stick-ups in the 70s. Heatley, aka the Preacher or the Black Hand of Death, and his crew were legendary for selling all sorts of drugs: coke, crack, heroin, PCP, you name it. They were out here extorting, kidnapping, and murking folks to make a name. They had a team of janitors who cleaned up the bloody mess after they did their dirt. Rumor had it they even snatched Bobby Brown, Whitney Houston's ex, over a drug debt, and Whitney had to pay that ransom. That's how deep their reach went. By the 90s, the NYPD and FBI had their eyes locked on Heatley's crew, who'd racked up almost 45 bodies. Heatley and Cuff copped pleas to dodge the death penalty. Heatley, at 47, pled guilty to racketeering and murder conspiracy for 13 homicides, getting hit with a life sentence. His lawyer, Joel S. Cohen, broke it down. No point in rolling the dice with a trial if it meant facing the chair. Heatley wanted to keep his fam from watching his execution and maybe be a better presence for his kids. Heatley's empire was known as the family, because his son, daughter, and girlfriend were all up in it. His son Shaka flipped and gave up the details on their operations in a 1997 prison interview featured in the documentary The Son of Preacher, the Black Hand That Ruled Harlem. Haitian Jack. Haitian Jack, aka Jacques Agnant, was one of them names that had everybody shook in the music biz. My man came from Haiti, born into a fam that was plugged into the political game heavy. They was living good, real educated, professionals type. His older folks were hitting up med schools and top-tier colleges in the States. Fam was even at them high-class parties at Baby Doc Duvalier's crib. But after that coup went down, everything switched up. His fam had to dip out to Brooklyn with barely any cash or connects. Jack only spoke French, so they threw him into one of them rough public schools. Every day was a fight for survival, and Jack, he wasn't backing down. Man turned into one of the hardest street legends BK ever seen. Ain't nobody forget that name in these streets. As a teen, Jack got his hustle on, robbing drug dealers' cribs and stacking paper. He ran with the Black Mafia crew, pulling in the borough's hardest cats, Tut, Nubs, Stretch, and other wild ones, all looking to score big from the drug game. They were so feared, they'd stroll through NYC's top clubs, snatching Rolexes and wallets from dealers without even breaking a sweat. Jack didn't just roll with any crowd, he rubbed elbows with Mike Tyson and pro ballers, charming them or pulling heat if he had to. He practically invented the friendly extortion hustle in the hood and even had Tyson scared of him. In the early 90s, Bed-Stuy was alive with rap, a place where the motto was do or die. Jack made it his business to get tight with Biggie Smalls, a rising star from the block. Tupac heard about Biggie, rolled through Brooklyn, and the two clicked instantly. Biggie had introduced him to Jack, a move that would change Pac's game forever. Jack thought rappers should show him respect since he lived the life they rapped about. Jack and Pac hit it off like family. Tupac was all about Jack's street cred and the raw power he wielded. Jack offered protection, women, and weed, while Tupac was the one footing the bill at all the hottest spots. They became inseparable, rocking clubs like Nell's with Madonna and other celebs. Jack thought his run with Pac was just getting started, but the streets had other plans. One night at Nell's, Jack leaned in and whispered some game to a shorty. She grinned and slid over to Tupac. They hit the dance floor and later bounced to his hotel suite. The next day she came back, and Pac took her to his room. Things were getting hot and heavy when Jack's crew rolled up in the spot. The girl ended up getting hurt and left in tears. Cops swooped in and nabbed Jack and Pac. Jack's lawyer, Paul Brenner, split Jack's case from Tupac's. Jack scored a 6-month plea deal, but Tupac's luck ran out. He went to trial, got hit with a conviction, and had to wait for sentencing. Pac felt stabbed in the back by Jack, thinking they should have gone through this mess together. He knew Jack could handle the heat, but he wasn't too sure about himself. Pac stopped answering Jack's calls and hit the club scene hard. When he rolled back into Nell's, he made a rookie mistake, talking to a New York Post reporter about Jack's business. That landed him on page 6, and Jack wasn't about to let that slide. P. Diddy was so shook by Haitian Jack, this dude actually handed over 10 racks and his Rolex just to keep Jack cool. Jack's crew lured Tupac to Quad Studios in Manhattan to vibe with Puff's Bad Boy Squad. Pac rolled up with Stretch Walker, one of Jack's boys, and that's when things went left. Jack's crew confronted Tupac in the lobby, and Pac tried to hold his own, but ended up getting blasted a few times. Head and groin took hits. Stretch caught some bullets too. Tupac started thinking Puff and Biggie set him up, and not long after he was sentenced to prison. Inside, Jack's crew had the prison system on lock, and they were gunning for Tupac. Then Suge Knight, the big boss from Death Row, pulled up and got Pac to sign with him. That's how the East Coast versus West Coast beef hit the next level. After all that beef between Bad Boy and Death Row, Biggie and Pac ended up being assassinated. Suge's crew was getting wrecked by all the cops sniffing around. Jack, being the hustler he is, flipped the script and hooked up with the Fugees. Wyclef Jean had deep pockets and Jack was all up in them. Wyclef didn't sweat it too much because Jack, being another Haitian, kept the heat off him and his squad. After Jack hit the road with the Fugees, he fell for the Beverly Hills vibe and started his own management firm, flexing his muscle with some shady deals and extortion. He was making bank, but the hunger for more was gnawing at him. When Pac got killed in Vegas and Biggie got killed in LA, Jack was left out in the cold. His crew fell apart, Nubs got taken out, and Tut went down on a Rico. The rest of his old gang were just scraping by, not making any moves. Jack was flying solo now. Knowing the LA scene could get messy, he kept it tight within his zone. North of Sunset, south of Pico, east of Fairfax, and west of the 405. That way he stayed out of gang wars and police radar. Jack was stacking paper, but boredom was creeping in. Detective Bill Courtney was undercover with the NYPD's intelligence division. He had his own squad and got handed the mission of a lifetime, booting the mob out of the music scene. Bill knew all about Jack from his robbery squad days and heard more about him when he was on the DEA squad. Jack was notorious for robbing half the drug dealers in NYC. The streets were buzzing about the Haitian one, but nobody knew where he'd vanished to. Jack's name was like a ghost story, the dude who was rumored to have clipped Tupac. Bill did his homework and found out Jack never even got his citizenship. As a repeat felon, Jack was ripe for deportation. Bill figured if he tracked Jack down, he could make him a deal, work for Team America or bounce back to Haiti. Last Bill caught wind of Jack was through the Kendu case. Bill's wiretap busted East New York's top drug dealer, Darryl Kendu Riley. A snitch dropped a wild tale about Jack from back when Tut was still around. Jack and Tut rolled up on Kendu's main dude, a straight shooter named TT. They busted into his crib, swiped his stash, and threatened his girl, Crystal, if she even thought about calling the cops. But Crystal, not knowing the play, dialed 911 as TT raced back home. The cops showed up, found one of TT's AK-47S under the bed, and TT got locked up. Jack's crew didn't stop there. They made sure Crystal couldn't testify by terrorizing her. TT kept his mouth shut, but Bill had a lead that promised to deliver Jack's location. So Bill hit up the source again, who was more than down to tell everything he knew. Dude dropped a wild story about Jack's antics. Picture this. Bill's informant was chilling with some homies in East New York, just vibing, when Jack rolls up in his whip. Jack hops out, all friendly-like, and starts shooting the breeze with the crew. Out of nowhere, they hear some muffled noises from the trunk. Jack grins, pops it open, and boom. There's this dark-skinned dude all tied up and gagged with duct tape. Jack yanks the tape off his mouth and goes, "Yo, where's the money?" The dude's freaking out like, "I don't know what you're talking about." Jack slaps the tape back on, shuts the trunk, and smirks at the crew, saying, "Dude needs another hour." Everyone cracks up. Jack switches topics and then peels out. No one ever knew what happened to that guy. The source, who got real cozy with Jack's girls, ratted out all Jack's spots. He knew Jack was hitting up the L'Hermitage Hotel in Beverly Hills every Friday night. Bill tracked this down and hit up a sharp detective over at the LA Sheriff's, Mark Gaiman. Bill was on Mark's line for weeks, but dude was ghosting him. Turns out, Mark was checking Bill's creds, keeping things on lock. An investigator from Orange County vouched for Bill, so Mark and Bill finally linked up. Mark spilled that Jack was in bed with an LA mobster named Ori Spado, pulling off music industry scams. Ori was looking to Jack to hit up Colombian stash houses in Beverly Hills. Bill sent out a pic, and Mark hit up the L'Hermitage Hotel. The head of security knew him from the jump and confirmed Jack was a regular. Bill hopped on a plane with an INS warrant, met up with Mark at a bar on the Sunset Strip, and they chopped it up about Jack, their grind against the Bureau, and all that jazz. While they were talking, Mark got a call from the hotel. Jack was dining in a day earlier than usual. The two of them hit the hotel, got Beverly Hills PD on standby, and planned to wait for Jack to bounce before making their move. Only thing? Jack's meals were marathon sessions. Dude would be eating for 4 hours easy. Jack was chilling with a lady and another couple in their fancy private room. Bill and Mark decided to camp out in the lobby, keeping an eye on the scene. Elevator doors open, and who steps out but James Woods? Mark knew James from way back and introduced Bill. James then dropped a wild story Bill would appreciate. James Woods was on a flight from NYC to LA and noticed some dudes giving each other shifty looks and hand signals every time the flight attendants came around. James flagged down a flight attendant in first class, asking her to call the cops. She pretended to care and promised cops would meet them at LAX. When the plane landed, James was told to stay put, and after everyone got off, 2 FBI agents came to chat. They didn't bust anyone, just took James's story and a report. Those guys ended up being the 9/11's hijackers. After James bounced, Bill and Mark continued their convo, had a few drinks, and waited for Jack's crew to finish up. When Jack's party finally left, Bill and Mark followed them to the valet, and Beverly Hills PD got ready. Jack got pulled over a few blocks away, and it turned into one of the longest felony stops ever. Cops pulled everyone out of the car, including a woman known as the Minister of Gabon's daughter, local money launderer. Everyone was let go except Jack. In the Beverly Hills PD interrogation room, Bill grilled Jack for 2 hours. Jack eventually agreed to join Team America instead of getting shipped back to Haiti. He was sent to Terminal Island on an INS hold. Bill had to hustle to get Jack paroled to him, which meant dealing with a U.S. attorney, INS approval, and a mountain of red tape. Bill hit up his favorite U.S. attorney, Tracy Lee Dayton, who flew out to L.A. and got Jack out about 6 weeks later. Mark picked up Jack, signed the parole papers as Bill, and drove him back to Beverly Hills. Jack promised Mark a wild night with 3 women to celebrate. Mark called Bill, put Jack on speaker, and Jack promised to deliver intel and be on his best behavior. This was risky. Jack was a loose cannon, but with Tracy's name on the line, Bill and Mark had to keep it together. They opened an OSDTF case in New York to fund their operations and bust organized crime in the music biz. Bill and Mark hit the West Coast, rented a spot in Beverly Hills, and started hitting up all the mob bars. They put the word out that NYPD and LAPD were teaming up, and soon the bad guys were sweating. They brought Jack in for his first debriefing, where he regaled them with wild stories of robbing stash houses and dealing with Tupac. He denied any involvement in Tupac's death. A month or so later, Bill got a call from a hitman turned informant in the East. The hitman had been asked to take out 50 Cent and passed it off to an associate named Tata. Bill worked with Jimmy Iovine at Interscope Records to get to 50's camp and prevent the hit. Mark and his deputies showed up for 2 nights of rap at the House of Blues. At the end of the second night, they saw Jack with 50 Cent pointing at him. Jack, 50, and his manager were spooked when Bill and Mark approached. Jack excused himself, and a serious chat followed. 50 Cent and his manager wanted nothing to do with solving the hit attempt. They were riding high with a #1 album and weren't about to rock the boat. When asked about Jack, They shrugged him off as just an A&R guy from the label. Later, Jack told Bill and Mark that 50 promised him a young R&B singer named Governor, but wouldn't explain why. Jack needed to be kept in check, and Bill and Mark were finding him more trouble than he was worth. Mark decided to keep a close eye on him. Jack complained to Bill about Lear Cohen and Dr. Dre demanding $1 million up front for Governor's album production, and how he wanted to deal with them without causing any harm. He also griped about suing Tupac's estate for calling him a rat in a song. Case was tossed out of court. Bill told Jack he'd give him up if he won. Mark tracked Jack's every move, and eventually Jack threw a party at Crustacean with 50's crew and a bunch of celebs. Bill was wired and sent in to record, but 50's guys never showed. Out on the smoking deck, Bill got approached by an Armenian dude who thought he was a gangster. Bill ignored the warning from Mark, who later told him the dude was one of their operatives. Bill decided to chill with Stevie Wonder and Aretha Franklin for the night. Bill and Mark ran hard for a year, busting fugitives and mobsters. Jack went MIA and didn't answer his phone. Bill got word from a reliable informant about shootings in Miami, but no solid leads. Tracy Dayton's husband was dying, and Bill didn't have the heart to give her the update. One Sunday, Bill was back east at his secret office in Chelsea. Mark told Bill to sit down. Jack had gone to a West Hollywood club with MC Lyte, got disrespected by Black Mafia family members, and came back to the club laughing and shooting one of them in the legs. Mark's informant was there and called it in. Bill called Jack saying he had his S visa and he was officially a U.S. citizen. Jack called back, all emotional, and promised to sort out his problems. Bill set up a meet at the Hyatt House on the Sunset Strip. Jack showed up, hugged Bill, and met U.S. Marshal Tony Burke. But then West Hollywood detectives burst out and nabbed Jack. He looked up from the floor and said, "You lied to me, Bill." Bill took Jack's keys and sent a detective to search his apartment. Inside, they found it tastefully decorated and full of cash, photos of Madonna, Jack, Tupac, and even President Clinton. Bill promised the search team copies of the photos. When Bill visited Jack in lockup, Jack told him he'd played everyone and explained the pics. Jack had been raising money for foster care galas and shared the honor with President Clinton, if the Secret Service only knew. Jack took a plea deal and was deported to Haiti a year later. Mark and Bill still get calls about Jack. He pops up now and then, but knows he's got a mandatory 5-year sentence if caught. Last they heard, Jack was managing Shaquille O'Neal and dealing with some issues in Miami. Now he's living legally in the Dominican Republic, backed by Wyclef Jean and whatever cash he stashed. Jack was a master manipulator of the music biz, charming, funny, and deadly. If his visa application had been sorted, he might still be cruising LA. All right, folks, that'll wrap up this video. Thanks for tuning in. Hop in the comment section and share your thoughts on these street legends. Don't forget to hit them like and subscribe buttons so y'all get notified whenever we drop. Peace and blessings.
The shit is wicked on these mean streets, mean streets.